Hello and good morning to the lovely Daniel, who is over in Canada. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, hi, yes. Hello, everybody from Canada. I'm currently in BC. It's a balmy -16 today, and yeah, very snowy out there. So, Daniel is my name, but I actually write under Morgan Greene, and I write the Detective Jamie Johansson series, which is set in Sweden. So I'm a British author living in Canada, writing about a British detective living in Sweden. And there is some sense to that, which I'm sure we'll get into. But yeah, for now, all you gotta know is it's Scandi noir with a kind of British Swedish sort of spin, in the vein of Will Dean or kind of Maria Adolphson. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
And we are talking on the eve of the release of your latest book. So would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So yeah, that's correct. It's coming out on New Year's Eve. It's called Death Chorus, and it's a new kind of start for Jamie. So I tend to write the Jamie series in like trilogies almost, and the first kind of trilogy in Sweden started Angel Maker, and then Rising Tide and Old Blood formed that kind of the Stockholm saga, and kind of referring to it behind closed doors, not in public because that sounds very embarrassing really, but yeah. So and then after the kind of the events of the last book, we jump forward in time a little bit, and JD's making a home for herself in a new sort of quiet town, and she's recovering from the kind of the damage and the injury of the kind of the last case in the trilogy, both kind of physical and mental and emotional. And yeah, she just wants a couple of months or years maybe to put herself back together and get herself right, and kind of figure out who she is and what she wants to do. But as it always goes with these kinds of stories, she doesn't really get much time for that, because somebody turns up dead, and it's not just an accident or anything. It's a real kind of grisly murder case. And yeah, it's a teenage boy that's found, and he's found on kind of what looks like a sacrificial altar, and he's got kind of strange cuts all over his body, and he's got a crow wedged down his throat, and it's rumblings all around town of kind of a local ghost story, the King of Crows, and it's kind of creepy, and it's a real kind of foray really into psychological kind of crime thriller, more so than just kind of a straight procedural, which was kind of what Angel Maker was. And yeah, it's just really creepy, and it kind of takes a lot of inspiration from like Hitchcock's The Birds, and a lot of inspiration as well from Mo Hader, who we sadly lost this year. And yeah, it's just fun, from start to finish. There's lots of humor and lots of kind of banter as well between her and her new partner. So where Angel Maker was a kind of very serious, very kind of like plodding classic Scandi noir affair, this one is still got all that real kind of dark, gritty kind of Scandi undertones, but it comes in with more of a enjoyable kind of light kind of humorous side, as well as a kind of more scary kind of chiller, thriller, suspense, pseudo kind of horror side as well. And yeah, it's it's basically a Long Island iced tea of a novel. That's probably the best way to kind of sum that up. So.
And I've been lucky enough to read it, and it's incredible, as all your books are. But this one particularly was awesome, and I shall repost my review actually tomorrow. We'll post it. Can't remember if I posted it, but yeah, I'll post it again. But the one thing I wanted to ask actually was why crows?
Why crows? Crows are creepy. They're real evil looking things, and I don't know. I've been looking kind of more into kind of Norse mythos and kind of history and that kind of thing. And while crows, mostly in kind of Western culture, are seen as kind of like harbingers of death and that kind of thing, and especially, and that comes mostly because of like the Black Plague in England, and you know, the crow's masks and that classic kind of plague doctor sort of thing. And you know, people associate crows with carry-on as well and that kind of thing. And so there's a real kind of sweeping feeling and connection to death with them, because they are, you know, carrion eaters really. But in Norse mythology, they're actually associated with kind of wisdom and knowledge and memory and that kind of thing. And Odin, the All Father, the kind of, you know, the chief god in kind of the new pantheon really in Norse mythology. You know, he had a raven who was a messenger, and who was, you know, somebody who would sort of deliver messages and kind of hold wisdom and knowledge and that kind of thing. And I really enjoy trying to kind of use devices like that, you know, and kind of themes like that are sort of double-edged and double-sided, and I really enjoy leading the kind of the reader down a path that, you know, seems, you know, either obvious or kind of, you know, is something that has a lot of kind of context and a lot of history and a lot of kind of weight behind it. And I think the crows are such a powerful device that have had such a kind of, you know, a presence in so much kind of popular media, and especially in, you know, in the kind of the horror and the suspense genre as well. And, you know, for me, crime is a chance to not only kind of do something different, but also take what, you know, other people have done and kind of not reuse it, but try and explore my own version of it. Because crime, a lot of crime, pretty much all crime, is very similar. You know, it has the same kind of plot elements and the same sort of beats of the story. So it's a case of like taking that and trying to do something new with it, and trying to, you know, show something that people know so well, and then still trying to surprise them is, you know, for me, what really makes crime special. So crows were just, you know, with Jamie being in Sweden, and with the kind of, you know, the kind of feelings and the kind of sense of darkness and death and mystery and kind of creepiness that I wanted to kind of capture, they just kind of appealed to me as a really kind of good central pillar to build the story around, I think. And yeah, that's why I chose them. And hopefully, you know, it wouldn't have worked so well if we'd used pigeons, you know.
No, that's a fair point, actually.
The King of Pigeons could be like a spin-off story set in Trafalgar Square as just a homeless man, you know, with a bag of bread, bludgeoning people.
Yeah, imagine if you get enough together, then it could cause some damage.
Yeah, exactly. But,
Yeah. If you were to take one of your characters out for a meal, who would you take, and what would you ask them?
Probably Halberg from the last trilogy, and I'd ask her whether or not she ever spit in Wick's coffee, because I definitely would. Yeah, and that's going to make sense to everybody who's read that, but probably not to anybody who hasn't. Like, what? Yeah, no. Wick or Vic was the kind of Jamie's partner in the Angelmaker trilogy, and he was very sour and not very kind of well socially kind of versed, and he used to really I don't know, torture his subordinate really, and in his mind it was, you know, part of her kind of education. In her mind it was just, you know, borderline bullying. So it's yeah, so she definitely spit in his coffee, I think, you know. I mean, I'm like, did she? I don't know, like, who would know?
Yeah, who would know? I know. Perhaps we'll find out next time.
Yeah.
If you were to be a fictional killer, how would you kill your victims?
How would I kill them? I know where I'd kill them. I'd definitely kill them in a country very far away from where Jamie is, because she's got a good habit of like kicking people in the head as well as finding them and catching them. How would I kill them? Honestly, I don't really know. How would I kill somebody? I don't know. I don't really think about it. You know what? I think about how I catch killers, not how I would be a killer. All right, you know, like don't try and tar me with this brush now, where you think, oh, all crime authors must be like closet murderers. No, you know. But definitely there'd be a wood chipper in there, and I'd probably burn the chips. And you know, maybe some stabbing just to see how that feels. I don't know. It's yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, most authors know the answer like that. So if you give me all that tosh about not thinking about it, then I don't believe you.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have to place ourselves in the mind of the killer. You know, every time we write a new novel, we have to think about how we would murder our victims and then, you know, go from there. So it's one thing I've always resisted doing, though. And I know a lot of authors do it, is they write those chapters that are just all in italics, where they're kind of in the mind of the killer. And yeah, I've always kind of really tried to resist doing that, just to try and like keep that barrier between kind of, you know, the goodie and the baddie in the story. You know, like it's such an interesting device to use both sides, but for me it's you know, and I've done that in a different novel, like working on, but I think the Jamie novels, it's I like to keep that kind of sense of unknown.
So stabbing and wood chipper.
You stab him first and push him into a wood chipper that spews straight into like a furnace that just like, you know.
Just you know, just a little tip: make sure they've got no false limbs or like, you know, eyes and stuff. You know, just in case.
Take their eyes out and their teeth, pull their arms off, and then just like torso into the chipper. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just tuck the rest of it into the fire. That's fine.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
But, you know, just FYI.
yeah. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, this is all hypothetical, you know.
Yeah,
Like,
of course.
we're not really talking about how to get away with murder.
No. You little hussy, you just want to be involved, don't you?
You know, an iPad,
And if you were fictionally killed, who would you like to investigate your murder?
Oh, Jamie, yeah, obviously. But yeah, she's I don't know, actually, she's pretty, like, she's not inefficient, she just doesn't really follow protocol. Maybe Vic, like, he's great, like, he's a really good, like, that's the thing that always got me, is that people were like, oh, you know, I don't understand why, like, he's the only one investigating, like, the Angel Maker murder, you know, he seems really inefficient, and I'm like, he's great, you just don't get his point of view because you're kind of reading the story through Jamie's eyes, but he's actually, like, whip smart and really, like, a good investigator, so, and he follows the rules as well. Jamie is just like, I'll do what I want, you know.
Yeah. That's interesting. You're only the second author that's picked your own detective.
Yeah.
Everyone else used pick someone else.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, I don't read that much crime. It's like I find reading crime I find it very fatiguing, you know, because I spent so long kind of agonizing over how to write it and doing so much research and that kind of stuff, and it's so, like, my life is so about crime fiction that when I read, I do read crime fiction, but, you know, I try and read outside of that as well. My favorite authors are not kind of crime fiction authors, so I'm reading a fantasy novel at the moment, and then I've got a dystopian novel lined up after that, and, you know, then we got the new Ishiguro, and you know, there's a new kind of Blake Crouch novel coming out as well next year. So it's like, I tend to read outside of crime and then try and bring those elements into it. You know, it's, you know, I read a lot of thrillers and things when I first started writing it, but it's yeah, it's not something I you know, I don't tend to enter into, you know, reading crime voraciously in order to, you know, like, I don't know, it's really weird. I spend so much time writing crime that, like, when I come to reading, I want to read something else.
Yeah, you're not alone in that.
It's
a lot of crime writers say that they don't like to read in case they accidentally pick something up from the books that they're reading and they include it. You know, they'd rather not have anything to do with any crime fiction until they're finished writing.
Yeah, it's and you know, it's tough as well, because you obviously, whenever you write with kind of your own version of what you think it should be. It's your own interpretation of the genre. Every author who sits down to write crime says, oh, I love crime, you know, but I'm going to write my version of it, what I think is the kind of, you know, my best version of it. Not, you know, and it's never the best, because I don't think you can have the best version of any kind of writing, but, you know, it's everybody's own version of it. It's like when people cover Christmas songs, you know, like, is it better than the original? Is it not? You know, it's just, you write what you envision is your kind of version of it. And I think when you read other people's versions of it, you know, it's like, it doesn't chime with you. It's really hard to get into it, because you're like, oh, I wouldn't write that like that. And it's really hard then to kind of separate for me the kind of the reader and the writer in that, because I tend to read fantasy and sci-fi and that kind of stuff as a reader, but when I read crime and other people's crime and other people's thriller, I read it like a writer, like an editor, and I'm just, I find it really hard to kind of dissociate from that stage of like writing, and as you said, kind of magpieing and being like, oh, I'm going to steal that, I'm going to take that, well, that's a really good idea, and it's very difficult to kind of get into a kind of flow of writing, reading when you're reading kind of work from your contemporaries.
Without spoilers, what's the most fun scene that you've written out of all your books, and what's the most difficult?
I really like the scene in Angel Maker where they first come into the murder scene, and I really like that because it's kind of 2 days after the murder's kind of gone on, and because it's so cold in the forest in Sweden, everything is like perfectly preserved, and there's kind of like translucent sheeting all around the murder scene, and there's these floodlights, and they're all just bearing down on this kind of gruesome scene of just this kind of young girl sort of posed like an angel on her knees in a kind of praying position with these sort of huge birch boughs kind of pushed through her back as kind of these big wings, and I really wanted to evoke like the sense of kind of gruesome beauty that like Hannibal, the TV series, does so well, where they have those kind of like the body made of totem poles and like the antler kind of scene in the first series where the kind of girls bend over and or kind of like hunched over, and I don't know, and I just really I rewrote that scene a bunch of times because I just thought that was so pivotal to have Jamie kind of step through into this sort of closed off world where it's the first time really she comes face to face with the work of an actual serial killer who is doing it out of some sort of passion or kind of love for killing, like in the older books, they were in the prequels especially, she comes across a serial killer in the third one, but it's a kill of like it's a kill of the moment, and as it kind of starts to unfold, it's she's already deep into the case before she really kind of comes face to face with that kind of presentation, and I kind of experimented with it there, but I wanted Angel Maker to really have that as a central kind of pillar, that as the kind of the point of kind of genesis for her kind of want to catch the person who's doing this kind of horror. So when she steps into that and she kind of walks around, because she just does this loop around the kind of the scene a couple of times to take it all in, and just and people have said to me, they're just like, wow, like that's such a kind of visceral scene really to kind of be in. So for me, that was the one that I found the hardest, but also the most rewarding to write, because I gave that to people after I wrote it, and I was like, what do you think of this? And they were like, that's so fucked up. What is wrong with you? And I'm like, so I did good.
This is why you authors are weird. The more we say, oh my god, what's wrong with you, you're like, yes. It's like a compliment. You're just weird bunch.
And there's you guys standing by going, yay, be weirder. Not like you should see somebody or like, do you need help? They're just like, come on, keep going.
Yeah, okay, you may have a point there. Yeah, touche. Fair enough. Yeah. Right. Anyway, when we first started talking, you said that you just moved to Canada, and Death Chorus is the first book in a new trilogy. So will the next two still be set in Sweden, or are you going to move, Jamie?
Yeah. So I'm already pretty deep into the next one, which comes out at the end of March, and that one's also going to be in Sweden. That one's going to be further north again, so that one's going to be kind of in the mountains, just near the border between Sweden and Norway. And Vic actually gets back in touch with Jamie and says that he needs a personal favor. His ex-sister-in-law's family have gone missing, and basically, he's tied up with kind of cases in Stockholm, and he needs somebody to look into it. The local police have turned up nothing, and he just asked Jamie if she'll go up and take a look around, and she gets up there, and immediately, shit starts hitting the fan, as it generally does wherever Jamie goes. so yeah, that's going to be kind of like the last trilogy. It's going to be just it's going to be a story that is a story in itself, and a self kind of contained story, but then also very much leads into the third book, which then will open up kind of a bigger kind of worms, and will be not like Old Blood in the sense it's going to be like an action thriller, but it will be a continuation of the second story. So you could read kind of Death Chorus in its kind of in isolation. Then if you read the second one, I think you're going to want to read the third one. So it's and they're going to be in Sweden, and then after that, I don't know. It's tough to say. I think I'll finish that, and then in my mind, that will be a kind of a line drawn under that little section of Jamie's life, and then probably I think I'm going to kind of continue in the same vein that she's going to be partnered with Torsen for a little bit longer, just because I think there's a lot of mileage in their relationship, and I'm kind of trying to build towards a longer term partner really, and yeah, we might see some old faces, we might see some new faces. I think generally, I don't know. It's tough to say. I really like the idea of exploring other places. I think that for me, it's a big world out there, and Jamie's got some friends in Interpol now, and in the FBI and back in the UK, and there's there's a lot of possibilities really. So I mean, we'll see what people want. If people really like Sweden, then we can definitely kind of keep it there. There appears to be lots of serial killers lurking around in Sweden, so I mean, there's plenty of work for her. So we'll finish the third one and then see where we are, I think.
Yeah, who knew it was such a murderous country? I thought they were quite peaceful people.
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it? It's they hide among us.
Do you have an end point in mind for Jamie? Have you ever thought about how you would finish the series with her?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like I don't ever see a happily ever after for her. Like I don't ever see her becoming the kind of person to just settle down and have some kids and that kind of thing. I think that if anything, I would keep her alive as a mentor more than anything, in that kind of classic role. Maybe that, I've put in so much kind of effort into building her as a person, and I wouldn't like to let that go. So if I was going to write her as an older character, I think in her kind of like final state, I would probably put her in the role of kind of an instructor, or kind of like the older kind of grizzled detective to like a new younger sort of protagonist. And I think for me, I don't think she'll ever leave the job. I think she's a lifer. She's not looking to get out. It's all she knows. It's all she ever wants to be, and it's the only way that she can kind of keep the spirit of her kind of father alive as well. So it's, yeah, I think for Jamie, it's going to be finding some sort of family inside the police, and maybe Torsen will be the first person in that family, who knows?
Yeah, hopefully, because them two are hilarious together. So,
and it gets better in this one, in the next book. So it's funny, and with Vic coming back on the scene as well, there's a good air of kind of like jealousy underpinning it that Jamie gets very tired of very fast.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, so if you could just hurry up and write it and send it over, that would be fab.
yeah, I'll do my best.
No pressure, it's fine.
We're almost halfway through already, and it's I'm trying to pump them out, this year. So it's
not like you've made a big move to another country or anything, nothing major is going on.
No, it was like I started writing the another kind of standalone, and I got kind of more than halfway through that before I started writing this one, and and I just kind of like ran out of steam, because I was writing it kind of like as we were moving and trying to get settled and that kind of thing. And sorry, can you hear my dog whistling? He's like a cat.
And then can you see my dog's ears sticking up because she can hear him?
Yeah, no, he's downstairs. He's just whining. I don't know if there's something outside, but I just got halfway through that, and then I kind of not ran out of steam. I just needed a bit of based from that story, but like I just got into the next Jamie and then was like, oh, this feels like comfortable. I'm in the swing of this, you know. So we're plowing on, we're steaming ahead, and yeah, hoping to do one in June, one in March, one in June, and one in October, and hopefully one in December as well. So fingers crossed we'll have 5 Jamie novels in the next 12 months with some luck, you know, with some good headwind or tailwind, whichever wind speeds you up. I think a tailwind.
When you're editing, what's your most overused word or phrase?
People have definitely pulled this up. They say that I use she rolled her lips into a line, or she pursed her lips, you know, like way too much. But it's, I don't know. I don't even think about that. That's just like a default expression I see for Jamie. She's just like just doing this kind of like bullshit kind of thing. So that, and people say I use the F word too much as well. But I mean, like, I'm just saying, if you're chasing a serial killer and you've got a guy dressed up as a giant bird, like, you know, chasing you through the forest, and, you know, you think people are trying to kill you, you're going to be saying shit and fuck a lot, you know? Like, it's like, you know, but who knows? It's just, I don't know. I always find that funny when people are like, oh, like, I'm totally happy with, like, you know, all the gore and the death, and like a kid being like strangled and like, you know, mounted on a thing, and, you know, people being like gutted and shot and strangled and like the crap kicked out of them. But like the F word, that's where I draw the line. You know? It's, what can you do, man?
Yes, I know people are weird, and you'll never please all of them. So
it's definitely something I need to kind of be considerate of, at least, because, you know, it's one of those. It's one of those things. Somebody told me it was a crutch once, that like, you know, swearing and like using capital letters and stuff. You know, if like you want something shouted, you know, you should be able to like infer that without the use of capital letters. If you like, you know, you want something to seem like shocking, you know, you shouldn't need to use kind of blasphemy or like profanity. You know, because I use Jesus a lot as well. Like, it's all a learning curve, you know, and I'm still learning. I think we all are.
yeah. If you're able to spend a day with any author, dead or alive, who would you like to spend the day with?
Probably the Ray Bradbury or Blake Crouch. I mean, Bradbury is, you know, one of the kind of the pillars of dystopian fiction, and Fahrenheit remains one of my kind of favorite novels. But maybe Ishiguro. Oh, I don't know. It's hard, you know, because like I'd be very selfish, because I'd just be there with a notepad, like asking them loads of questions. But they'd be like, why did I read this? You know, like, who is this guy? Like, I was dead. I was happy. I was sleeping in my coffin, and then just like some random guy comes and like rips the lid off and just wakes me up. And so I go, what happened? Like, how do you do this? How do you do that? So, yeah, probably I think Ishiguro or Bradbury would be my topics.
And if you're able to travel to any period of time, either forwards or backwards, where would you go?
To the nearest point in the future post-COVID, probably. You know, no. It's so hard. Like, that's such a difficult question, because it's, you know, it's like you go past like 1980 backwards, and like modern medicine is terrible, you know, and like you think about going forward, and you're like, you know, you watch the news and you're like, climate disaster impending. So like, you got to wonder, is this the golden age? You know, like, as bad as that sound is, like the next, well, I think between like 2000 and like 2020 were like they'll be looked back on, I think, as like the golden period of history, where you know, technology was, you know, came on leaps and bounds, you know, and we had, you know, the introduction of kind of microchips and quantum computing and all of these kind of, you know, medical procedures and things which like changed the world. And then I think in the next 10 years, you know, with the climate and things, we're just going to hit a tipping point, and, you know, it's going to be disaster. So, you know, I think probably, you know, as close as I could get in the future, where like COVID's done, would be great, because then you can still enjoy it before, like, you know, the world dies. As bad as that sounds, you know, it's not to put a downer on this or anything.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, if we could see that date, that would be bliss. Just to know that it does actually end.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. I mean, there's you read certain news outlets and they say the end is coming. You read other news outlets and they say there's light at the end of the tunnel. I think, I think until everybody's on the same page, it's and until the longer time goes on, the more research there is being done on it, and the better the vaccines are becoming, and the better the kind of PPE and avoidance and everything and tracking is coming. I think if anything, we'll never get into this state again with, if there is another pandemic. I think we'll just be much, much better prepared to kind of implement, these kind of long-term solutions and stop it before it begins. But it's tough. I'm excited to look back on this period, and you'll be telling children about it in 20 or 30 years. You'd be like, we lived through that, in the same way that people live through other disasters and life, world-changing events. So it's crazy to think about it. It's just the scale of what's going on is just mad. There's plenty of inspiration and fodder for dystopian novels ticking away in the back of the mind. I know that much. So
yeah, definitely. I'm very bored of living history now, though. I'd quite happily not live history and for it to be history.
Yeah, there's definitely that. It's I think it's time now. I think everybody just wants to go back to normal, but all we can do is just survive for now.
Yes. Okay, on a much more light-hearted note, where's the funniest or strangest place you've ever woke up?
The funniest or strangest place I've ever woken up. I'm a terrible sleeper. I don't fall asleep anywhere, so it's really tough. I don't know. I don't think I've woken up anywhere really strange. I don't think I've ever done that thing where I've woken up and been like, I don't know where I am. So I'm that person that's like shaking people awake at like 5 a.m. like, I'm going home. They're like, you're really drunk, and I'm like, I know. It's gonna be an adventure. And I'm just like Bilbo Baggins in the hallway, like running out of the house, like, ah! And then I'm like, where am I? I don't know where this place is. And then I'm like ringing taxis, and they're like, it's 5 a.m. And I'm like, okay, well, GPS, then I'm just gonna run home. And then I don't know, like it's happened a few times where I've like done a marathon walk home. I mean, like if I'd have just stayed for another hour, I probably could have just caught a bus or something. But no, it's just like, but what can we do? So.
If a genie was to grant you 3 wishes, what would you wish for?
See, like I'm very a bit existentialist, because I'm just like, so I often think about this kind of thing, and I'm like, oh, would you wish like immortality or the ability to never get hurt? And then I'm like, you'd never feel fear, then you'd never feel enjoyment, because there'd be no risk. So I think the ability to heal any injury or sickness would be really good. The ability to do that in others as well would be really nice, because I just think I've got so many people that I know that have been hurt by sickness or injury and just have never bounced back, and it's just it's difficult to watch that. So I think I'd want to be able to ensure that for myself and for the people I love. And then the third one would be to never put on weight when I drink beer. that would be excellent, to be honest, because that's becoming a real issue. So yeah, 3 pretty grounded ones, I guess. Like I think at the end of the day, if you've like I know plenty of people who've got plenty of money, and that doesn't seem to buy happiness, and plenty of people who've got plenty of money, and that doesn't seem to buy health either. So my father always said, he's like, as long as you've got your family and you've got your health, there's nothing else you can want for, really. So for me, it would be those 3, because I'm like health, family, beer, perfect.
It's good to see where your priorities lie anyway. So
yeah, I mean, like pause in time would be pretty sick as well. I like that. Or like being able to win like the lottery, I guess. Every time I play the lottery, that I would win. I mean, like you definitely get investigated by like tax people. Like they'd be like, hang on a second, you've won the jackpot 3 times. And I'm like, well, I'm just lucky, I guess.
You'd need to just win that like one big one, and then I want to question it, and you'd have so much money you wouldn't know what to do with it.
like I feel like that would, like I really enjoy writing, and I want to make it a career, and I love the kind of the grind and the journey. Almost that's what keeps the kind of the fire stoked in me. So I feel like if I won 160 million pounds, I don't feel like I'd be like motivated or inspired to write very much anymore. So I don't know, like I'm kind of like, I don't know, take it or leave it with the kind of with the loads and loads of money thing, because I just don't know if that would be, I don't know if I personally would find that fulfilling. I like to work, I like to create, I like to grind. So it's like probably the only person in the world who'd be like, yeah, no, I don't want. No, I mean, like if you offered it to me, I'd take it, But like, would I waste a wish on that when I could just be like, no, I just have my health and the health of my family and loads of beer. I'm like, no.
Yeah, I wouldn't offer you the whole 160 million. I might give you one, just to tide you over.
One would be perfect. Like if I could win $1 million, that would be great. It's you buy a house mortgage free and just like put it away and use it for a rainy day. That would be really nice. I don't really want to. 160 is just a bit obnoxious, isn't it? So.
I don't think I even have 16p at the minute, so I couldn't even do the lottery if I wanted to. So yeah, don't hold your breath anytime soon.
No, okay, yeah. I did read something the other day that said you're 3 times more likely to get struck by lightning than you are to win the lottery. So, I mean, it's like, if that's the price though, it's like, would you get struck by lightning 3 times for $160 million? It's like maybe, like,
yeah,
depends.
I'd go 1 for 1 as well. One strike for $1 million, because yeah.
And then well, at least then you can like get the first strike, you get the first $1 million, and then you can decide if it's worth it. Then whether you want to go back for another 2, and then like
depends on how quick you spend $1 million, I suppose. Once you've got the house, the car, private jet, I reckon, because to travel you've got to do it in style. See how much change is left after that, and if it's not much, then think about the other couple.
I think I'd go with a boat rather than a jet though. Like a big yacht would be cool.
Yeah, I'm not very good on the water. I'd rather fly. I puke.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so definitely flying for me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fair enough then. Yeah, I hate flying. Well, I don't hate flying, but like I preferred like driving. Like we used to drive down to Europe from the UK, and that was just so much nicer than flying. You're just cruising, you're just in comfort, and you get to see the world, and you can stop whenever you want, and it's really nice. Obviously, pre-COVID. So. But what can you do?
Indeed. What was your favourite first as an author?
My favourite first. I think when you first start writing, you get a lot of this thing where people ask you what you do, and you say, you've written a book or something like that, and they're like, oh, I'd love to read it, and you give the manuscript to people, and loads of people, and they just don't read it, because a lot of the time when we're starting out as writers, it's we're not very good. Like it's a long learning curve, like self-education, and I think that happens a lot. And a lot of people just are very like polite in the sense that they're like, oh, I'd love to read it, send me a link, I'll buy a copy or whatever. And then when you see them next, they're like, oh crap, this guy, I haven't read his book, and that goes on and on and on. So it took a long time for me to actually tell people that I was, an author or a writer, because, most of the time I just say, oh yeah, I'm a copywriter, and, and then afterwards they were like, oh, I found out you actually write books and this kind of thing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to save you from having to like be polite and tell me you want to read it and then never do, and then feel really awkward every time you see me. Yeah, I guess the first time that I met somebody and they said, oh, I'll read your book, and then they actually did and said, oh, it was really good. So I think that was one of my partner's family members actually, and that was really nice. And I was like, "What, you actually read it?" And they were like, "Yeah, I read a lot of crime fiction, so I gave it a go, and I thought it was really good." And I was like, "Wow, okay, is this what success feels like?" So yeah, that's a pretty wild kind of moment. Yeah.
Well, I can't think of any more questions for you, unless you think there's anything I haven't asked you about that you want to tell us.
Oh, I think I've been talking for far too long already. yeah, I don't know. Is there anything anybody would like to know? I don't really know. Yeah, follow me on Facebook for any updates on the series, and yeah, I'm also running an Instagram now, and we're going to be posting, some more kind of interesting videos. So follow me on Instagram as well. The details are on my Facebook, or you can just search for Morgan Greene author on Instagram. Yeah, the next Jamie novel comes out tomorrow. It's called Death Chorus. It's available on Kindle as of tomorrow. It's also available on paperback right now if you want to go and buy yourself a copy for $9.99. Angel Maker as well. The first book in the kind of the Swedish saga is on offer right now for 99 pence, and as of the 1st of January, Rising Tide, the second book in the trilogy, will also be on offer for the month at 99 pence. So yeah, if you want to grab yourself a bargain for Christmas, you can do that. Other than that, yeah, the next one comes out in January. Lots more other stories coming this year, and that's pretty much it, I think. Oh yeah, and they're now on audiobook as well. So yeah, I struck a little agreement with a great kind of production company called WF House, who produce audiobooks for thousands of authors, and some big name crime authors as well, like Simon McLeave. And yeah, the Angel Maker is already out on audiobook. It's narrated by the lovely Sophia Engstrand, who is actually mixed Swedish and kind of British heritage, just like Jamie. So she's sounds very British and neutral like Jamie, and she's got that really kind of authentic kind of pronunciation of all the Swedish stuff. So it's really, really good. It's totally painful for me to listen to somebody read my own work. It's so cringy. It's horrible. It's like nails on the chalkboard for me. But other people tell me it's kind of a really good read. So yeah, if you want to listen, you can listen and pick yourself up a copy. And Rising Tide will be out soon, as will all the subsequent books. So yeah, so there's really, for you guys, absolutely no excuse not to read them, because they're available on paperback and Kindle, and they're on Kindle Unlimited, and they're available on audiobook. And and if none of those suit you and you don't want to pay for them, just give me a call and I'll just read them to you. So because I don't really
Plus, they're all amazing. I think I've given them all 5 stars so far, I think, haven't I? The ones I've read.
Yeah, you're far too kind though, but I really do appreciate it.
I don't, I mean, I give them more willingly than Leslie, but I don't give them unless they're deserved. So
well, thank you. It's really it's so tough to know whether they're actually like any good. You write something and you're just so, especially after I write something and finish it, I'm like, oh, that's a good one, and I'm really sure, and I'm like, oh, that's the best one yet, or like people are really gonna like this. And then I start giving them to like advanced readers, and they come back and they're just like, oh yeah, it is really good, and I'm like, you're lying, it's terrible, why are you being so nice? And then it kind of leads up to release, and just like the first reviews start coming in, and I'm like, you're sort of so like, oh no, this isn't gonna last. It's like such a weird sense of trepidation that like that you've kind of surrounded yourself, or you filled your kind of advanced readers list with people who just like how you write, but that the actual general population are going to be like, what is this pile of garbage? That's really kind of scary. It's really nerve-wracking to kind of lead up to a release. So for tomorrow, I don't know, yeah, nervous, worried, I guess, but it's all part of the fun, it's
you have, Leslie, you don't have that worry.
well, it's I want to keep writing, I want to keep doing better, and and I as much as I love reading kind of positive reviews, the ones that I take the most note of are the negative reviews, and I really kind of read them, and I read them, and I read them, and I read them, not to get hung up on them, but to kind of try and extricate from them what it is that people didn't engage with, because for me, I want to keep improving, and I think that it's I think you can learn so much from the people who give you that kind of that good constructive negative feedback, and even the people who are just like, I hated it because it was this or it was that, or whatever. It's like you can still take stuff away from that and still try and build a novel that is closer to that version of your version of the perfect example of what you're trying to write. And I think that's for me the kind of the overly philosophical kind of nuance of whether or not a book is good. I don't think it's ever a case of just, is it good? It's like, what were you trying to do, and how close to that kind of the perfect version of what you were trying to do did you get? Like as like stupid as that sounds, it's it's like you can never be perfect, you you can never be the best or write the best version, but you can try to write the best version of the thing you're trying to write, or something. I don't know. It's very early here, and I feel like my caffeine levels are quite dipping.
Because I've questioned you.
Yeah, well,
Made you think.
It really has been a blast. We did a few interviews and things pretty much a year ago now when Angel Maker came out, and I did one on UK CBC, and it's just been kind of a whirlwind sort of 12 months, with books and COVID and moving and everything. It's just, it all just feels like it's gone by in a blur, and it's like thinking about when COVID first kicked in. It was in March 2020, and since then it just, I don't know, it just feels like a time warp. From then to now, I just can't recall any one specific moment in the last 22 months or something. It's just,
yeah, I know. I've been doing these for just over a year, and I think I've done I think I'm like 220 odd now, and it's just weird, like, and they're booked till next November.
Really? Well, it's such a huge thing for authors, so we're all very thankful, and hopefully, the people who watch them and, discover new authors and get to know, the authors themselves. And I think that as much as it is a golden age of like technology and life and that kind of thing, and that the world is in a golden place, I think writing, though it's and kind of books and things, though there's so much negativity surrounding, like, is print media going to be dead, is like the novel dead, are like readerships dwindling, is the next generation going to read? I think that if we're in the twilight years of kind of print media or of books, then I think all we can do is just really embrace what technology is doing alongside pushing kind of like novels out, in terms of things like this, like author interviews, and that you would have used to have had to have like gone and bought something like the Paris Review, like a really niche magazine to like read. You can now just engage with an author on their social media page, and they'll come back to you because it's so easy to do. You don't have to like sit down and answer a bag of fan mail one by one now, or like employ somebody to pretend to be you to do that. You can just sit down and just answer people back. And I love talking to to readers, and I've got like I don't know, a few dozen long running conversations just through Messenger and things on Facebook where people have just reached out to me, and they've either been like, oh, I was given one of your books, or I've read one of your books and I really like this and I really like that, and I'm like, what happened to this character, and like, what happened after this, or like, what were you doing when you wrote this scene, or like, like, and it's great. It's so nice to be able to engage with people in a really like organic way. So if anybody out there has read anything of mine, or wants to read anything of mine, or needs some more convincing, like, reach out, like, let's talk. I love talking to people.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, because you were like, oh, is there anything else you think you want to be asked? And then I just started talking for 10 minutes, so I'm really sorry about that.
No, that's fine. That was your moment, so there you go.
That was my moment, and I completely bungled it, as I usually do. So
No, you didn't. Don't be a tart. Pull yourself together, man.
Yeah, well, there does need to be some of that, yeah.
So I would just say I'll post all the links for your books. For the new one tomorrow, I will repost my review, and I will remind people of the offers.
Perfect, thank you.
And I will bully them into buying them because I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll get everyone to message you, and then you might regret saying that.
Oh no, I don't think I will. It's
Yes.
fine. I'm still
Yeah, we'll see. I'll see that as a challenge. You realise that, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, if everybody that I can speak to, becomes a reader, and they find some enjoyment in the books, and I can give some enjoyment or escapism, during these times to people, then it's worth answering some messages. And there's been some really lovely messages coming through over the Christmas period as well, and it's been really, really rewarding to to be part of this community, really, of readers and writers, and I love it. It's been a ride, so it's hopefully one's going to continue.
And that's